Good morning and welcome to today's program, Marketing Beyond Trade Shows. This event is brought to you by the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, PNDC, and Graybox. First, we want to confirm that all those joining us online today can hear okay and see the screen. Please type yes in the questions panel of your GoToWebinar dashboard if you can see and hear everything. Excellent, thank you all. Wonderful. Please feel free to use this same question field to ask a question at any time during the program. Just type your question in the webinar dashboard and we will share it with our speaker. A copy of the slide deck is available under the handout tab on your same GoToWebinar dashboard. We will also have a recording of this presentation available after the event. PNDC is thrilled to welcome Graybox's VP of Strategy, David Hughes, today as he navigates us through Marketing Beyond Trade Shows. These are unprecedented times, and as we all continue to adjust to this new normal, it is important to evaluate your industry's digital landscape, company website, marketing strategy, and best practices of companies succeeding online. David is a tenured technology and marketing professional with over 15 years of experience, guiding diverse clients through digital transitions in marketing, e-commerce, and back office systems. Currently, he leads the strategy team at Graybox, where he helps companies leverage contemporary technologies and marketplaces into their holistic business strategies. Thank you again for your support and sharing your considerable expertise with us today, David. I'm now handing it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I just wanted to get my screen shared up, so hopefully everybody can see that. And I'm sure somebody will yell at me if you can't see it. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about marketing beyond trade shows. So I've got a bunch of slides. I know there's going to be some time for Q&A at the end, so we'll try to move through things and definitely be thinking about questions as we go along. So just real quick on my side, talking first about Graybox. So Graybox is a digital consulting business, and I'm realizing that I don't think my video is on. So let me do that so that you can see that now. Now you can see me. And now let's share my screen again. One moment. Okay. Okay. Hopefully you can see me and you can still see the slides. Graybox is a digital consulting business here in Portland, and we work with a wide variety of companies and focus specifically on solving business problems, really focused on the digital sphere, and our efforts really focus on delivering measurable results that move the needle. And so we have definitely a local and regional focus here in the Pacific Northwest, and are involved with a lot of different industries and associations, obviously including PNDC. A little bit more about me. So yeah, I've been at Graybox for about the last 4 years. I started my career in the restaurant industry in New York, which was short-lived but very exciting. But I've been in the digital space and the agency world for over 15 years, working primarily at digital agencies, focused on strategy, marketing, communications, design, and e-commerce. So that's been kind of my area of focus. And a lot of my day-to-day is doing sales and marketing for Graybox, but also facilitating a lot of strategic planning initiatives, both internally as well as with a lot of our clients. So just kind of a few things to be thinking about, a few key questions as we get into the topic here. And they are, really we want to be thinking about, where are your potential clients looking for the solution that you offer, and specifically online. With trade shows not being really possible right now, thinking about what that translation is going to look like, just be thinking about where they're actually going to be located. And if so, are they coming to you, or are they going to a competitor? And so we're going to be thinking about that and ways to be making sure that you're able to differentiate yourself in this environment. And then if they have found you, are you actually, what you're doing digitally currently, is that effectively converting them to customers? Because at the end of the day, that's a goal for customer acquisition and retention is really important. And so we want to make sure that there are things that we can do to have that happen. From an overall agenda for the next 30 minutes ish, I'm going to talk through some guiding principles just to kind of set the table. We're going to talk a little bit about evaluating your digital presence and ways to be thinking about that, and things to be thinking about, and tools potentially to be able to use for that. Definitely want to spend some time looking at marketing opportunities, considering 2 different customer types, and thinking about marketing channels and how you're going to ultimately use those channels to your advantage. And then there's a kind of a too long didn't read wrap up at the end for everybody, just to kind of wrap up everything from this morning. So just to start with the guiding principles to set the table. So, trade shows can be very effective, and we know that. Obviously, that's why a lot of people do them. And so the key things that can work really effectively there is that they're a captive audience, right? Folks who are attending trade shows are there for a reason. They have a baseline knowledge of your industry. They're typically looking for education or looking to do research specifically to make a buying decision, either for technology or other solutions. And so there's that bubble, so to speak, around the show that allows them to be a captive audience for you to be able to, as an attendee or a sponsor, that kind of thing. Also, it affords that personal connection. A lot of us our market in terms of the customers that we're selling to aren't necessarily in our geographic location normally. And so having the opportunity to make that personal connection with somebody can certainly give you an opportunity to differentiate your business from all the other ones out there and all of your competitors. So that personal connection can be very helpful in a trade show environment. And it also affords you some access to information, right? I mean, as a sponsor, mostly not as an attendee, but if you're a sponsor or you have a booth at a show, you're able to get a prospect list, an attendee list to be able to follow up with afterwards. And so there's that effort of being able to use the data for follow-up marketing efforts. So really the key question with that is, can you leverage the same sort of strategic approaches towards targeted, relevant marketing for trade shows to effective marketing solutions online? And the short answer is yes. And we really encourage everybody to be thinking about that there are other things here that you can do, and really be thinking about it as an opportunity. And really focus on what it is that your company does best, and that you can separate that from the rest of the competitive landscape, especially in the time like what we're in right now. I think that it's a good strategy overall, but certainly right now it's kind of forced the issue, right? Where definitely need to be thinking about ways that you can differentiate yourself where other competitors may not be. A few key things to be thinking about in translating that trade show strategy to digital is that business hasn't necessarily dried up. Business need hasn't necessarily dried up. The reasons that people were going to trade shows before around education or making buying decisions, for those folks that are still have a business need and still have clients or customers that they need to serve, they still need information. They still need solutions to their problems. And so there's still a demand there, even if it might be relatively less than it was, for instance, 2 months ago, there is still demand there. We also encourage you to focus on the fundamentals, focus on things like that actually provide measurable results, and be thinking about taking a data-driven approach to actually measuring it. And I've got a few more bits on that here in a few minutes. And also be thinking about planning for when this is over. Everything that we're talking about here isn't just a bubble of information that would be helpful now. It's definitely going to be something that will can be part of a holistic marketing strategy in the future. For when trade shows do come back, you can add that to the mix and have all these other things that you can try as well, and continue that into the future. So the first part of this, and this is in the context of really be thinking about like an area to be thinking about is making sure that you understand and know your audience. And in this case, audience is really the idea of your customer, your prospective customer, your ideal customer. And we really encourage you to take stock in what you know about them and make sure that it's documented. We build a lot of personas here for a lot of our engagements so that we, as proxies for a lot of our clients, can understand who they are. But it's really important to be able to get a good understanding of who your customers are so that you can figure out where they're at and meet them there. Wherever that happens to be. And so, questions that you might ask yourself about them is like, what makes them tick? What are their buying motivations? Who else are they looking at in the market? What is their level of price sensitivity? When business is good and easy and there's a lot of demand, sometimes these things you don't have to think about them as much because it comes a lot easier. Now, really need to think about it because it'll put you in a different frame of mind, and it will also, I think, open your open eyes to opportunities that you didn't necessarily see before. And that final point is making sure that the team is aligned around what these are so that you can help drive decisions towards what you're going to be doing to potentially market to these folks. One of the things that we look at when I talked about personas is this idea of documentation. And so a lot of it, trying to be as visual as possible with it, it can be really helpful. It puts kind of a face to a name. In this case, this is a persona, a kind of a high-level persona for one of our B2B clients. Michael Bean. Michael Bean doesn't exist, but that archetype of who he is as a senior architect is definitely something that, when we're thinking about, okay, where is he likely to be at? What are his goals? What kind of price sensitivity might he have for making a buying decision for, in this case, this product? Like, be thinking about that and document it in a way so that you can, put these up on the, in the home office. If you have a printer, put them up so you can kind of see them in a different light. And again, these are things that are good, tried and true practices that you really can be doing at other times of the year. But if you haven't gone through an initiative like this, now would be a good time to spend some time actually looking at this, because regardless of whether or not, in this case, this person is, spending a lot of time on design blogs, or, in your case, if your target customer is, rather be sitting on the couch watching how it's made on Discovery Channel, like, get that documented somewhere, and really be able to point back to it, and it'll be a good form of team alignment. Another thing to just be thinking about is data can really be your friend. And, part of the first part of that is, and when we're thinking about translating good trade show marketing to digital efforts, is making sure that you have a good point of comparison. What is the kind of ROI that you were expecting to get before as part of trade shows, and use that as a stake in the ground and an understanding of, hey, this is what we were doing before. How are these digital efforts going to compare to them? Obviously realize that with the diversity of costs around going to trade shows, sponsoring trade shows, what is the average lifetime value of your customer? Like, so many factors are going to go into what is the ROI specifically for you, but making sure that you have an understanding of that relative to what you might be doing digitally then is going to be really important, and using that data is going to be key. The other thing that encourage on the data side, since digital, there's so much data that you can look at, is making sure that you have a good understanding of what the baselines are right now for whatever you're doing currently. If that's your website, like website metrics, as I'm showing here, or if you've been doing any email marketing or advertising or that kind of thing, get a good baseline of where your analytics are right now. Kind of another point with that is try to get a baseline of where your analytics were before March, just as like a more accurate baseline of where things were at. Data we've seen in the last 2 months has just kind of gone haywire. And so don't necessarily over-index on what the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks have looked like, but try to look at it kind of as a period to the lead up to this quarantine episode that we're in right now. Going forward, make sure that you are continuing to focus on ROI for your efforts. Dollars out for leads and qualified opportunities is really, really the name of the game, regardless of what channel you're using. And so make sure you're thinking about that and leveraging leveraging the tools at your disposal to be able to calculate that. So another area is evaluating the digital landscape, and there are a few key components to that. First is doing some research. Like I said earlier, this pandemic is forcing the issue a bit, right? Where you need to be considerate of what you're going to be trying out and what you're experimenting with and what's going to work specifically for your audience. Obviously, PNDC, there are a lot of similarities and commonalities across a lot of the businesses that are associated with PNDC, but there's a ton of diversity there as well. And so I would just encourage contextualization of any of the things that I'm talking about to your company specifically. And that's something that, is always good to be thinking about, but especially in times like this, make sure that you're doing that. Competitive research, if you're not doing it regularly, now is absolutely the time to start doing it. In the context of, are you above or below the line that's set elsewhere? When you look at your competitive set and who those folks are you above that? Is the bar too low in your specific space, and you really need to be looking elsewhere for inspiration? But definitely, I call this strategic borrowing from competitors and businesses outside of your industry can be very helpful in providing some inspiration for where you're going and what you might want to do from a marketing perspective. Finally, and this certainly piggybacks on my comment earlier around personas, put yourself in your customer's shoes. Obviously, they're going through a lot right now as well, but think about how their day-to-day has been impacted, and think about the things that they might be doing differently than they were 2 months ago, where there's this big hole in how they're looking for solutions out there, and make sure that you're positioning yourself in a good way to market to them. Your digital presence ends up being a key part of your digital marketing overall. So we view this really as the hub of your marketing efforts. And honestly, digitally or offline, your web presence especially ends up being a really important component of that. So it needs to be working effectively for you and not being a liability for your business. So a few key things to point out here in terms of how you might evaluate things. The first is just getting better insights into what's working and not working with your current site. That can help then prioritize optimizations for fixes and improvements. And so this example here on the right is one of our clients, and we talk about getting some visibility into analytics, things like Google Analytics, if you've got that installed. We also use heat map analytics, which essentially give you an indication of how people are interacting with specific components on the page. Can be very illustrative of articulating what the gap might be between what you're doing right now and how your users are actually interacting with your content. And that can be extraordinarily important to be able to, again, prioritize optimizations overall. Keep in mind that the improvements and optimizations that you make now will definitely pay dividends into the long run. I mean, it kind of gets back to what I said earlier around like plan for the future, is that this isn't just like short-term improvements for short-term gain. They're short-term improvements for much longer-term gain, because this thing is we don't have a clue when this is actually going to quote unquote end, and we could be doing this for months, and trade shows end up being a lot of time in the spring and the fall, and so we certainly hope that everything's back to quote unquote normal in the fall, but just be thinking about this is not just short-term investment, but this is really long-term investment. Finally, we talk a lot about scraping for nickels, like where are those little tiny low-hanging fruit opportunities that you can do to get visibility into things. And part of your digital presence is also realizing that people may go to your website, but they also might reach out via phone and try to give you a call. And for most companies, that's not something that they have visibility into in terms of who's actually calling and maybe what channel is driving calls to the business. You can actually track that. There are tools out there that allow you to essentially create tracking numbers that are sourced back to a specific channel, so you understand that, hey, this person called, they came in through Google, and you know that they came in through Google specifically. And so it's pretty slick, and honestly, you can use these for offline materials as well, because those same phone numbers can be used, or specific phone numbers for like a mailer that you're doing, could be used so that you get a better understanding holistically of who's reaching out to your company via the phone. Okay, so this is kind of the meat of everything this morning, is around the marketing opportunities given different customer types. So we're thinking of this as there being two different primary customer types, and obviously realizing there are a lot of different businesses that are involved in PNDC. I'm trying to overgeneralize here, but I think that these are accurate given the space. One group of people is specifically looking for a solution, and they may not know that you're out there, but they're looking for a solution to solve a specific problem. There's another group of people, though, that they don't even know that there are alternatives to what they're doing currently. Each type needs to be treated very differently in how we're approaching marketing to them, because they're not going to be looking in the same places, and they're going to be acting a little bit differently from one another. And so just be kind of keeping that in mind, because as we talk about the next few things, we're going to try to be the lens that we're going to be looking at it through is this idea of two different customer types. So for the folks that are essentially opportunities from a digital marketing perspective for customers who are quote unquote on the hunt. So there are a number of things that we would consider, quote unquote, pull mechanisms that can be employed to get in front of people who are looking for solutions to their problem. And when I talk about pull, it really is in the context of people are looking for something, and your goal is to pull them into your sphere when they're looking. And so there are specific channels and tactics that we can use to do that in a way that doesn't necessarily work if they're not looking. So paid search is a perfect example of this. So, we're obviously talking about paid advertising through things like Google or Bing or elsewhere. And so when people are using a search engine, they're searching for something, right? I know it's kind of a no-brainer, but like they are specifically searching for something. And so if you want to show up to them, you can advertise to them using specific keywords. But if they're not looking for the things that you're doing, then you're not going to be able to show up. And so that's what we're kind of talking about in the pull side of things, is that you're wanting to pull them into your sphere based on what they're looking for. Paid search as a channel is as close to what we have as, what we refer to as a marketing spigot as you can get. You spend money, you generate traffic, which can translate to leads, calls, conversations through your site, and then obviously you hope conversions to customers. If you turn it up, you can get more traffic and more leads. If you turn it down, you will get less. Obviously, along the funnel of people see an ad, people click on the ad, people go to a landing page, people see information on the landing page that's relevant to them, and then they reach out. That's where each of those elements around your site experience and like the performance of your site and all that really factor in, right? Because you're paying for traffic to come to your site. And so each of those steps needs to be optimized well in order to take advantage of that spigot. But paid search is, again, all around aligning what people are searching for around the products and services that you are selling. You can also, paired with the idea of people using Google to search for things and you bringing them to your site, you can also employ remarketing, which essentially takes that group of people who have come to your site and maybe didn't convert and didn't call or what have you, and remarket to them after they leave your site. I'm sure we've probably all seen, ads for sites. This is especially large in the e-commerce space, but you see this across all B2B and B2C. The idea that you're going to see display banners to brands that you may have gone to their websites, and this is the whole idea of remarketing. They know that you've been there. They're able to track that. And they're able to then give you relevant content after you actually leave their site. It can be very effective and honestly pretty inexpensive to do that. Paid search as a channel can be great. It can also be very easy to spend money. And so it just needs to be managed extraordinarily effectively to make sure that you're reducing wasteful spending. The whole adage of, well, I can cut 50% of your marketing budget, but I can't necessarily tell you which 50% to cut. That kind of applies here, but there are so many targeting things that you can do with paid search to really make sure that you're honing in on who you're really going after and who are the folks that are actually converting. I would say that paid search is probably the direct, from a marketing channel, one of the most direct links between cost of and getting somebody to your site via ad, landing page, inquiry, and close sale. You can, there are metrics for each of those stages of the funnel that you can really, so that you can determine kind of ROI that you from paid search, which is on pretty widely based on. It's kind of an example of that around where your ads. Google's changed a lot, but right now it's a lot to make ads look results. Obviously, honestly, other than there is really nothing ad entry there. Entry effective for search. It's really a long-term traffic and leads. You can make a lot of organic optimization, SEO right now, maybe months before you seeing a result that given of search engines around how is in the general, and so there's a bit of it's a great traffic. You're going to generate traffic. Situations you don't have those actual words on your site, they're not going to be able to find you. And so making sure that your site is optimized from a content perspective in optimizing.
I sincerely apologize. But to have some
scratchy audio.
You could turn off your camera. That would
sure.
Yeah. So that will help.
Sure.
With if you turn off the camera screen, that will help with.
Yep. Just give me a sec.
I sincerely apologize.
Okay. Reshare my screen. Can you guys hear me? Is this generally better?
Well, yeah, let's go back a few. I'll let.
Is the audio quality better? All in.
Better. If you want to go ahead and share your screen again, then we'll see the.
Is this audio? Carly, Katie. Is this audio quality any better? I'm just dialed in at this point.
Absolutely.
That
if
is
you want
much
to go
better.
and share your screen again, I think we can
Okay.
resume.
Yep. Great. Okay. Apologies. See, it wasn't the kids this time.
Right.
It was technology. Thwarted by the technology.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I am back, and I'm on this screen specifically focused on opportunities for customers on the hunt. Talked a little about organic search. I was kind of talking a little bit about content optimization and how important that is, as well as the other components that factor in a lot for SEO, our technical site configuration. So how the website platform is actually configured, as well as what other sort of links are linking back to your website. So things like other industry sites, associations, other blogs, industry blogs. Those are the kinds of things that can really lead to great optimization from an organic search perspective. Email marketing, for as long as I've been in the industry, email marketing has been dying. And so it's honestly, it's a channel that continues to be extraordinarily effective. And specifically for in the context of customers who are looking for something, this can be mostly be used for re-engaging with folks that are in your CRM. This is definitely an area where you've got, when you're getting a lot of leads in, either from trade shows in years past or what have you, you'll do a round of follow-up with them, and then they'll just kind of sit in your CRM. And this is a great opportunity to re-engage with them and be able to reach out with them with either a drip email series where you're sending out a series of emails over the course of a period of time, talking about your offerings, honestly being pretty transparent and direct about the current situation and what may have changed for you and what you can still do for them. This is, again, just a great way of engaging folks that are, I would say, warm leads for you who you may have communicated with in the past, and now is the best time to be thinking about communicating to them again in the future. Finally, surveys are another good way of engaging folks who are in your CRM. And, in the context of pull, really looking at ways to get data. Back to my point earlier around customer research, get customer research directly from your customers can be extraordinarily important. So the other group, sorry, just real quick on the drip email series, it's something that I wanted to just show a quick visualization of that. The idea of being able to have a stepwise process of email one goes out, then there's some sort of delay between email one and email two, and really thinking of it as a series versus just a kind of a batch and blast campaign where you just send it out to everybody and just hope that people respond. Really thinking of it as a progression can be very helpful, and this visualization gets a little bit at that. So the other category of folks are the people who aren't necessarily looking. And for those groups, this is honestly the tougher nut to crack in a lot of ways, because they're not necessarily looking for something. So when I think about trade shows and I think about the people who are at trade shows, these people might just be the ones who are just wanting to educate themselves, or they are fine with the status quo right now and they don't know that there are alternatives out there. So the same kind of pull efforts, like people use, like paid advertising, that kind of thing, they're just not going to work in the same way because people aren't looking for something. And so you need to figure out a way to get in front of them in a more targeted fashion that isn't too aggressive, but give them visibility into things that are going to be helpful for positioning yourself as a solution to their problem. So LinkedIn can be extraordinarily effective here, especially in the B2B space, because there's so many targeting options that you can have around interest, company, obviously specific companies that you might want to go after, job title, what their location is, are all different factors that are honestly all available as targeting options within LinkedIn. And so it can be very effective. Now, how do you do that? Well, there are a few different mechanisms within LinkedIn. One of them is sponsored content, banner-based content. I've got a screenshot of that here in a minute. or paid in-mail communications, where essentially you're sending targeted communications to individual people. But the idea is essentially people are on LinkedIn, and you can provide visibility into what your company does and the solution that you provide, either from a product or service perspective, in places that they're already seeing content from other connections in the industry. And so you're able to provide them visibility, and you know that the right people are seeing it because the targeting options are so specific that you can make sure that you're getting in front of everybody, you know, who's in this one industry in and around Seattle kind of thing. And you can get so specific with that so that you know that the people who are seeing it are going to be potential prospects for you. Groups are another way to participate, are another area. LinkedIn groups are hugely diverse in terms of the different topics that are listed there, from huge topics down to very, very specific ones. And this is an area where, you know, getting in and participating in the conversation is part of that. Especially if you've got people on the bench at your business due to what's going on with COVID-19. This is a great opportunity for them to get out and be able to act as liaisons with your company and share their knowledge. And so that's something that can be very effective and definitely worthwhile to take a look at. I'm not, I mentioned, you know, LinkedIn is obviously a social platform in a lot of ways. There are other social platforms out there, Facebook, Instagram. They may be helpful depending on exactly your industry or your area of focus, but your mileage is definitely going to vary. They're traditionally not, you know, Instagram and Facebook are traditionally not great from a B2B point of view. It's not exclusively true, but like for most situations, it's usually not. And so you certainly give it a try and give it a test, but just something to be thinking about in the future. I also want to just give you a quick taste of what LinkedIn advertising can look like. So that center box is what's called sponsored content. So essentially it's a post, video content, image content that you are adding into somebody else's stream within LinkedIn based on, again, those targeting options. The block on the right is more of a traditional like banner-based advertising. It's obviously a little bit less it's a little bit less in the regular stream of content that people are reading, but you can definitely, it's a, I don't know, there's lots going on there. And so you've got a little bit less competition for eyeballs, so you can get pretty targeted with content that's appearing there. And there are a bunch of different ad sizes, so you can take up the full block or a portion of it. And so definitely, you know, opportunities within LinkedIn overall. So just to kind of wrap up, I know we kind of burned through a lot here in the last half an hour, but I would say 6 key takeaways. So if you're screenshotting one slide, this is the slide. So first one is you can leverage the same sort of strategic approaches towards relevant marketing around trade shows to strategies that are going to be effective for digital marketing. The same kind of mental model can work. The channels are a little bit different, but the same approach can absolutely work. Make sure you know your audience. Build personas and make data-driven decisions around ROI. There's no better time than right now to make sure that you really understand your audience and that it's documented. Take stock in your current digital presence and make sure your site is working for you. If you don't have visibility, install heat maps, look at Google Analytics and see how your site is being used and how it's converting so you can prioritize optimizations. For prospective customers looking for solutions, pull strategies like paid search, like I mentioned, organic search, and email marketing can be very, very effective and very attractive from an ROI perspective for driving traffic and driving conversations. For potential customers, though, who don't know that there are alternative options out there for what they do or what you specifically can provide them, go to where they're at. Mentioned LinkedIn ads, groups, targeted email messaging, and there are a handful of really solid options there that can be effective. Finally, everything that I mentioned today will absolutely still apply when trade shows exist again. And thinking of this as a holistic marketing campaign across both offline and online can be extraordinarily effective in the future. Thank you. Any questions?
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. And thank you again for managing that audio issue. You sound wonderful now.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So a question for you that we've got is let's see. So we are working on a virtual tour of our company. Can you speak to some of the key factors you think are important to include?
Yeah, that's a great question. So virtual tours obviously can be very effective at providing visibility into what your company does. And I would say that you've got so little time to attract somebody's attention. Really try to make sure that you're front loading any of the content in there, so that even if they just saw the first 5 to 10 seconds of it, they got some impression of your business. So a lot of videos that might get produced have a really long intro with just kind of some brand imagery and those sorts of things. If people aren't hooked from the beginning, you're probably going to lose them. So just be thinking really hard about like what content you really put at the beginning of that virtual tour. I would honestly say that the answer to the question of what are the key factors are going to be more around what are the channels that you're actually going to want to have the virtual tour in. Is it just on your website? Are you planning on promoting that content on LinkedIn? Honestly, there are different tactics that you might take based on the channel that you're actually going after. But think of it as, if you're thinking of it as a brochure or a landing page on your site, what are the key things that you want to communicate around your business, your service offering, pricing considerations? Really show that you understand who they are, whoever your target audience is, and make sure that that's apparent in the virtual tour. We can definitely get carried away with some pretty awesome things that you can do nowadays with doing virtual tours, and it's a matter of making sure that they're effective and actually delivering ROI.
Awesome. And let's see, the next one is, we are working on some key tips that you can provide to build/create a relationship digitally when you don't have, what are some key tips? When you don't have the ability to meet face-to-face. So what are some key tips you can provide, to help create a relationship digitally when you don't have the ability to meet face-to-face? I apologize, my screen jumped because questions are flowing in.
No worries. I mean, I think it's very much going to depend on whether or not you're talking about, the handful of different audiences, right? I mean, for the folks who are completely prospective customers that you've never had any relationship with, building that relationship digitally when you can't actually see them in person. I mean, honestly, there are going to be a variety of things that are going to be relevant specifically to your service offering. But I mean, there's a tools question. I mean, building that connection via things like Zoom or GoToMeeting or other solutions out there. Your business may not have employed those kinds of things before. I would say that we've definitely seen an uptick in usage of those and an expectation that, if we can't meet in person, let's make sure that we get on a video call. Having that face-to-face connection is extraordinarily important. I mean, when the technology actually works, but it is extraordinarily important, and there are thankfully a lot more tools nowadays that they can help facilitate that. I would also say that we as an agency, we sell to a lot of businesses, and a lot of their problems are complex, and what they're looking for is complex. And sometimes it really is important to get in front of a whiteboard and honestly just kind of articulate, what we're talking about and what they need, and trying to plan together kind of thing. And there are other tools, thankfully nowadays. One of them is called Miro, M-I-R-O, which is a virtual collaboration tool that we use for all of our virtual workshops. It can be very, very effective at, really having a virtual, whiteboarding session to be able to get in front of somebody and validate that what they're saying is something that you understand, and you're able to reflect back to them that you understand what they're asking for. And so there are definitely tools out there to be able to help facilitate and approximate what an in-person, meeting or discussion might look like. But it's going to very much depend on, who they are and if they're a prospective customer or, a formally contacted lead and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Next question is, we are currently seeing a boom in e-commerce sales during this time. We want to take advantage of the increase in traffic without the perception/reality that we are trying to make money off of a crisis. Any
Right.
tips?
Yeah, that's a tough one. We have about 2 dozen clients in the e-commerce space as well, both on the B2B and B2C side. And certainly there are some that have been negatively impacted, but I would say the majority are positively impacted as people are needing to go online to buy things versus versus being able to go into a retail location. Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act, honestly, in trying not to take advantage of the situation, but making it pretty obvious that you are able to because you're selling things online and you're selling things that people can buy from the comfort of their own home. I would say that the core tip there is do something that's on brand. Don't everybody knows what's going on right now. I mean, I don't think that you have to make the case around, hey, it's easy to buy things online. I think it's focused more on the things that are your value proposition, and make sure that you are really communicating your company values in any sort of communication, if it's via social or email or any sort of advertising. Make sure that it's on brand and communicates your company's values. We have a client, just as by way of example, we have a client that sells both products to consumers, but also through wholesale channels. And all of their wholesale channels have exclusively dried up because people can't go into any retail locations. They've essentially done a program where you can purchase through their website, and they will give a % of that to the retail location that they would have purchased through. And so you're able to kind of select a location of like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm supporting my local store. And for them, it was extraordinarily on brand in being able to do that. And they've had a positive bump in terms of, honestly, trust from something like that. But it's also, it feels good because I'm able to support the place that I was going to go to anyway, as well as the brand. So I would say don't do anything that's not on brand. I know there's a lot of nuance there, but yeah.
Awesome. So next question is, what are the implications from taking your CRM database and doing direct marketing from a privacy perspective, and in understanding the EU complications of doing so?
Yeah, well, lots of nuance there. So if your CRM, CRM just broadly as a mechanism to have contacts in it, those contacts could be coming from a lot of different sources, or your CRM may contain contacts from a lot of different sources. So I would say that the same sort of things that you want to be thinking about at any other time of year apply right now, where you want to be really, really clear as to who you're potentially communicating with and who has given you permission to communicate with them. And so folks, certainly, when you're talking about current customers or people who have been past customers, the restrictions are going to be a little bit different than if people signed up for, an email newsletter that you may have had on your website or had sales conversations with in the past. That's going to be a different segment of folks that you're going to want to communicate with differently from a creative perspective, but also, the expectations are a little bit different in terms of how you're going to individually communicate with them. So there are a lot of regulatory restrictions, but I would say just in general, don't communicate with people who have not given you their permission to communicate with them. And so there are, from a marketing perspective, you just have to be really careful about it. EU is pretty restrictive about that as well. But even in the US, canned spam, which has been around for 20 years, certainly has some restrictions around what you can and cannot do and should not do. Yeah, good best practices there are don't generally communicate with folks who have not given some sort of permission to have you communicate with them.
Excellent. So on to the next is, going to trade shows is usually a great way for me to connect with people who are already clients. Is it wise to use digital marketing on existing clients?
Absolutely. I would say that when you look at the prioritization of at times like this, whether or not you want to expend effort in generating new business from new companies versus new business from companies that you already have a relationship with, I would always start with are there opportunities with businesses that you're already doing business with right now? And so just from a customer cultivation perspective, depending on the size of your company and whether or not you have 24 clients or whether or not you have 20,000 clients, obviously the tactics are going to be a little bit different. But if you have 24 clients, you should probably call them. And that personal touch can be extraordinarily helpful at times like this. I wouldn't necessarily classify that as a digital marketing effort. If you have a lot of customers that you're currently doing business with, you can absolutely communicate with them via digital marketing means. And I would say that email is probably going to be your best bet there, just around communicating a diversity of services or other products that you might sell. A lot of companies have a relationship with a vendor only in the context of what that thing is that they're selling or that service that they're getting. But they may not know that you actually do a lot of other things. And this could be a great opportunity for cross-selling, essentially, other things that you do that they may have known about 2 years ago, but they kind of forgot because that's not how you're engaged right now. And so, honestly, just a reminder sometimes can be very helpful. So email, like a drip series to current customers about, hey, these are all the other things that we do, can be very effective for reminding you that you're there and that there are other services that you can provide in that context.
Awesome. And how would I research if people are looking for my specific service or product online?
Yeah, great question. So there are kind of two pathways there. One is certainly you can get a sense of search based on using tools like Google Analytics. Google Analytics and Google Search Console are kind of like the two components. They're obviously free services from Google, but they can be connected to your website so you can get visibility into what traffic is being driven to your site specifically using keywords. And so if people are looking for, a generic term in your industry or your brand specifically, you can see exactly how many searches exist for that. I would say more broadly, so that's one path. The other path is using something like any sort of trends data out there. There are a lot of different tools that can provide this. Google also has a free one. I think it's google.com/trends. You can go there and you can put in any search query. This typically works better for like non-branded terms. So industry terms that are more generic that aren't your brand name. And it will tell you what is the general search volume internationally, domestically, state by state, that kind of thing. And so you're really able to get a sense of what kind of volume is out there. And then you can use that to help drive decisions around what kind of content you might want to have on your site. We typically see sometimes a big gap between what it is that your company sells as a service or a product and what people are actually looking for. And so this kind of like truing that up is very, very helpful to determine, hey, yeah, this is a service that we offer, but that's actually not what people are looking for. That's not what they're calling it. And you can do relative trends. You can kind of put two things or multiple things side by side to see that, well, this is what I used to describe it, but there's actually another way of describing it that wasn't the way that I was talking about it, but it actually gets 10 times more volume and maybe just as appropriate. And so always be thinking about that. But I would say your own site data, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, as well as other like trend data out there can be, that's free. It's very accessible.
Awesome. And although we're in the midst of this new norm right now, it is going to be over someday. So
Yep.
How can I use the digital marketing to help our participation in trade shows when everything is back on track?
Yeah, a great question. So I think there are two forms. One is kind of a pre-show kind of thing and a post-show. And so be thinking about, especially if you've got any sort of access to the attendee list. If you're a sponsor or if you're actually displaying at a trade show, you're typically going to be able to get the trade show, the attendee list. You can build up demand and/or interest for meeting you at a trade show in advance through a drip email series, a combination of drip email plus reaching out to folks on LinkedIn plus calling folks as a as a strategy before the show even starts, so that you can then line up conversations or line up product demos or whatever happens to be at the actual show. Once you're at the show, you're kind of, again, in this bubble. And so, depending on what the show is and what the sponsor opportunities are, sometimes there are, digital things that are part of that in terms of, either text blasts that happen through the show mobile app or something like that you can capitalize on, but that would be only related to the actual sponsorship level that you've got. After the show, though, I think that definitely falls into, okay, what are the kinds of channels that you can communicate with folks on? Email can certainly play a big role there. Honestly, LinkedIn, paid search. Again, if people are in that research phase, that would be the time, if you've got a trade show, let's say at the end of the month, for the month after that, probably there's going to be an uptick in people looking for products and solutions that were related to what the show was about. And so that might be a good time to actually do and try some advertising, or might be a good time to try a campaign on LinkedIn. And so just be thinking of it, thinking the timing of something like that.
Excellent. And now someone did, I'm not familiar with the term drip email. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So drip email is essentially just an email series and the whole idea of drip is that it's like one drop and then there's another drop and there's another drop. Just be thinking of it as any sort of series of emails that are topically related to one another, that will go to a single customer or a group of customers or a lot of customers or prospective people that have some sort of time gating associated with them, where one might get sent out today, and then in 5 days you'll send out the second one, and in 2 weeks after that you'll send out the third. And you can, we talk a lot about crawl, walk, run in a lot of our strategies. Be thinking of ways that there are lots of complexity you can get with this around, do you send out the fourth email if somebody opens the third one? Or maybe if they call and you don't send out the fourth email. There's a lot of complexity that you can get with it. But overall, drip email is essentially just a series of emails that have usually like a schedule associated with them that are topically relevant to one another.
Excellent. And now I've gotten several requests for what I know is the next slide that you have, and folks are hoping that you are going to be sharing your contact information with them.
Yep.
Excellent.
Good segue.
Yeah, I know, right? Great segue.
So if you want any more information on the topic, don't hesitate to reach out, davidthegraybox.co. And if you have follow-up questions about your specific business, happy to have a conversation about it.
Awesome. Folks are now saying, thank you. They really appreciate that. It's like,
Absolutely.
we share all this great info and then say, absolutely not. David is no longer available to take their questions.
Yeah. And you can certainly, shameless plug on our website. There's a lot more information on the Graybox site as well that you can check out on these topics as well.
Perfect. So if anyone else doesn't have any further questions, it looks like we are really wrapping up right within that 60-minute mark, which I think is pretty fantastic. So David, thank you again so much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate you being here with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined us this morning as well. Following this webinar, you are going to be receiving a 3-question survey. We would love to get your feedback as we use this information to help us develop future programming here at PNDC. So please let us know what you think, and we'd love to hear from you. And other than that, this webinar has now concluded. Take care and be well.